Hong, thank you for joining me on the first episode of my new show, which is going to be focused on the people in open source. And I wanted to start the show with you because I think you have had an interesting career. You do interesting things in open source, and I think you've got a lot to share with people. Now, in this new show, I'm going to ask a series of questions. The questions I'm going to ask are, what brought you into open source? What do you work on today? What has been the most interesting thing you have seen so far in open source? What do you think will be the most important thing to watch for over the next 24 months? And if you could say one thing to young people thinking about this community, thinking about joining this community, what would it be? So, well, let's get started. Let's begin with the first question. Why are you here? What brought you into open source?
Oh, hi. What brought me into open source? Um, it was 10 years ago when I first started to learn about, I don't know, let me put it that way. The person actually brought me to open source is Mario Belling, our co-founder of Force Asia. So I met him 10 years ago at an open source conference. This is the first conference that organized by the EU in Vietnam. And I was there just like a normal English translator. Very little knowledge about IT, and I was curious about everything. And then Mario inspired me by his passion for technology, his work, and that was the first time I got the idea about open source. And not so long after that, an incident happened with my laptop. So at that time, I used ICU Windows. I think it was Windows 95, Windows 97 or something at that time. And the computer didn't work anymore. And I met a couple of friends from the Linux user group in a university here in Singapore, and they helped me to install Ubuntu. And for the first time, I started to use an open source OS, and I tried to realize that it's so simple, very easy, and I can easily software. And at that time, they still have open office. So now it's the open office, like the office. So open office is really convenient, and I can do most of my work with open office. So I started to realize that this is a much better solution, and we don't even need to pay for it. And I started to join the weekly meetup at the local Linux user group, and I met a bunch of people, a lot of developers, and I was really inspired by their passion, how consistent they are with the technology, and how friendly, and always try to share their knowledge with other people. So they don't look at me like a person who didn't have a clue, but they really welcoming and always show me. And like I also learned how to do Python by the community, by the people around. It's always like really friendly, inspiring. So that's how I joined the open source
That's,
community.
you know, that's a very interesting point that you were inspired by passion originally, that, you met someone who was really passionate about open source, and it kind of put a seed into your head that this was an interesting community. I met Mario, I think, about 10 years ago, too. I think I met him in Taiwan at the COS Cup event there. And he is indeed extremely passionate about open source technology and the potential for society. Now, you mentioned that you started using Ubuntu in Singapore. Have you been in Singapore for a long time? Does it have a vibrant open source community?
Yes, I studying here in Singapore, yes. So even though Singapore is a small city, but the open source community pretty active. There's a lot of user groups here in Singapore, and they're all very established for many years. And you can see like that regular activity, regular meetup, people get together, share and learn, and it is a very international place. So you will see people from all over the world. And this had also got something to do with the establishment of the open source community here, I would say.
I have never been to Singapore. It's one of the countries that I really want to go to. So I know that you have some events in Singapore that you're involved in, and this brings me to my next question. What do you work on today?
Okay, so I'm actually managing Phuc Asia organization. So Phuc Asia is a network of people from everywhere who believe that by working together, collaboration, we can make the world a better place. That sounds really broad, but I explain in detail what do we actually do.
Yeah.
So in particular, we develop open source technology. So we have a wide range of solutions from software to hardware, from design to web application. And now the most recent project is open source AI. But my part in Phuc Asia, so what I do every day, so I connect different user community in Asia, try to engage developers into open source project, whether it's under Phuc Asia or any other open source project around the world. So my job is to get more open source contributors in Asia to join the global community.
This is a huge job.
We at Phuc Asia, besides develop technologies and solutions, we organize a lot of events and meetups throughout the year and across Asia Pacific region. One of our biggest events is the annual Phuc Asia Summer, which happens every year in March in Singapore. Yeah, and also throughout the year we have smaller meetup in Vietnam, in Taipei, China, Cambodia, Thailand. So the goals of being meetup is to introduce people to open source, and sometimes we have very dedicated workshop like Python workshop, Java workshop to teach people some certain technology. And apart from that, we also organize a lot of so we conduct a lot of training, like coding program for younger students. So not only about we do not only focus on the developers, establish the engineer, but we want to engage younger people. So we have training workshop for students even from high school. So we also together with high school and university where we try to engage various activities. And next month, we will launch our annual coding program for coding, where people everywhere, students everywhere can participate, learn how to code for different open source projects hosted under Phuc Asia. Yes, and that is pretty much what I do.
It's a lot.
But I still think it's not enough. I really enjoy what I'm doing.
Now, in countries like Vietnam, there must be a tremendous amount of potential for engaging with young people. I believe that there's a very large young population in Vietnam, for example, in also Cambodia, and this vibrant, youthful population sounds like a really great place to set the ideas of open source. Now, you're from Vietnam, I believe, originally. Is that right?
Yes, I'm from Vietnam.
And have you found that the young people that you meet in different places in Asia easily get an interest in open technology and in building open source?
So for young people, that people always young people always curious and interesting to participate in community. that for the young people, you cannot like impose the idea of open source or technology to them right away because you want to think people from different backgrounds, and especially for the young people, they have very little idea about even technology. They don't know so much what kind of technology, what kind of solution they like open source, everyone have the passion for learning and be connected with the international community. So guide them to enter the open source community. It's not about telling them, okay, so this is the technology for life, but tell them this is where you can get connected with people everywhere around you, with students from other countries, make friendship, and after that to learn more about different culture and the way people work and bring in the idea of open source. So and the young people they are very willing to do so, they're willing to learn more.
It sounds like you are working in a fascinating area, somewhere that is full of energy, full of challenges. It must be satisfying and exhausting at the same time.
Yeah, it's satisfying, but I don't feel exhausted for doing what I like. but what I want to mention here that for me also, I did not come from a tech background. For me, open source is not only about technology; it's about the way people work together, the way people thinking is the culture. So not only the people who have the technology, the engineering can participate in everyone of the community.
That's an interesting point, and it's an important point, that open source is not really about code, it's more about collaboration.
Yeah.
And on this note of interesting points, what's been the most interesting thing you have seen so far in the open source community during your 10 years of involvement?
I would say life changing. I would say the life changing experience that open source brought to people. Like look at me for instance. I come from an underdeveloped country. I couldn't imagine myself where I was engagement in open source. Open source actually gave me opportunity to think, to learn, and to be independent. And not only myself, so I met so many people in the community and my friends that have been like go through the same path and share the same experience with me. So every year at the Phuc Summit, I would got like a note from people that I never met before in the community. Because of course Asia now I got the job. In Singapore now I moved to Cambodia. I met my true love. And online for many years never actually met a co-developer before, but now they actually got to get together. And another experience is one of my very good friends he is a teacher in a small town in India. And coming to South Asia was the first time he traveled outside his country. And then after that, every year he would travel somewhere, be very active member in the community, and got to connect with so many people in the world. And this is not the only example. So as I know, a new German developer who finally like moved to Cambodia because he got connected with the local community through open source. So for me, what really exciting to see is how open source actually changed the life of people. Yeah. Well, so I don't say that open source will make people rich, but it open a lot of doors, open opportunities to people.
There's a certain. I'm very interested in this point because it's something that is very valuable. Maybe I would use the term social mobility, perhaps. It might not guarantee riches, but it provides an avenue for being more mobile for all types of people. I mean, I myself, I'm from Ireland. I'm from a tiny country. with a relatively restricted economy nowadays. And open source provided a huge connection to the world. And here I am nowadays living in Japan. It's very interesting how the network of people provides opportunity. I have a question related to this. It seems like in Asia, organizations like Phuc Asia are connecting a lot of people. These networks.
The last sentence, please.
Of course. I was saying that Phuc Asia seems to be connecting a lot of people. And these connections sound so important for the future. Do you think that Asia in particular is one of the most vibrant areas for building community at the moment?
Yes, I would totally agree. So Asia not only with the open source community, but we also, if you look at like business education and every industry around the world, so the bigger world and very private, of course, it's a way to go for
Okay. We had a slight interruption with the sound, but I think that your key point was understood. And I have another question for you. What do you think will be the most important thing to watch for around open source in the next 24 months?
The next question, what could you so that the next question.
Yes. What do you think will be the most important thing to watch for in the next 24 months around open source?
Around open source?
Yes.
So I our interview, I mentioned to you something about artificial intelligence.
Yes. Yeah.
So I would say open source AI. So big tech companies are hiring into AI, and Elon Musk from Tesla started the open AI not so long ago, and I think for years the application of AI into consumer products or services would be very interesting to watch.
About
And, so it's also can I?
yes. I was going to just follow up with a quick question about OpenAI. OpenAI seems to consist of two things. One is the artificial intelligence algorithms, but the second important thing seems to be data sets. Are there difficulties in getting the data sets for OpenAI, or is that something that you are also working on?
Okay, so let me explain to you a little bit about the idea of open source. So you know that it's happen to do research on different. But so what does it mean by open source AI? So it's a solution. It's an AI solution that built by the open source community. We don't limited to a group of a group of experts or very high profile, but we open our development of this particular AI SUSI to the wide breadth of community. So everyone can participate into the development. So that is our idea of open source AI. So instead of we don't have a huge resources, if you put the knowledge base for this AI, it becomes more complete solution offered by Google, Microsoft, or Amazon. So this is our idea.
Now, have you got...
It's an answer.
Well, there was a little bit of stuttering in the video, but I think it's not too serious because the audio continued. And you mentioned that there are internet giants like Facebook and Google working on AI. Do you think they are supportive of open AI? Have you found any help from these companies to support open development around AI?
In a way that Google also is the solution. TensorFlow, for instance, is an open source solution that offered to the community. So we can actually they develop that, but they are also very open up to the community because and you say the giant tech company, they understand how important the open source community is, and I think they are very supportive.
I guess that OpenAI and AI in general has the potential to really make some big changes in society.
So that is what we've been working on, and we're looking forward to to see the application, to see the success of it. Actually, our solution is called SUSI.ai, and it's quite a stable version at the moment. People, if you have time, you can go and try out, and you can also, as you mentioned about the data set and the knowledge base of the AI, you can actually and anyone can easily make the knowledge.
You know, that's a very interesting point, that you have the open data set information as well. I think that's really critical. So, on that note, it seems that not only are you working in OpenAI, but you are very passionate about it.
So I'm passionate about technology. So and I can see the if application. I'm looking forward for the application in the future. And for me, so you know that so instead of just using the AI, building the knowledge is not so. I'm not talking about an open up like all the open data. So so if you look at how people like build AI with the knowledge behind it, right? So we have a system that people can contribute to the knowledge of the AI seemingly a Wikipedia, same thing. So everyone can engage and participate. So not only using the solution, but I myself can see that, okay, actually I can also make some changes and I can also install it on my internal server and make it my own AI. Of using the data set is not. I understand that people have a lot of questions about how critical it is to do like open data, and also even nowadays when you go talk open source to different companies, they also is open source. It means that it's not secure. But with my knowledge, so I don't think it's still the question about the solution people today. Not that you can install it in your on internal server and it's building, then how you can use which a tools for you and how you how skill, how skill you want it to be. It's your choice. We just offer here a tool for you, for your services.
It's a remarkable potential for people to have. And on that theme, on that note, I would like to ask the final question. If you could say one thing to young people who are considering the open source community, who have heard of open source, what would it be?
So I would say, so this is an inspiring community, and if with freedom, join the open source community today. And if you don't know how to start, you can start by looking out for Asia. I don't know if I could say that. And join our community. I don't know if it's like too much marketing, but we are a very friendly community. There are a bunch of things that you can do. A lot of documentation of where to start, whether you are a coder, you are a designer, or just a high school student. No matter where you are, who you are, we are you.
I think that's a really good message to wrap up our interview on. So, if you're interested in open source, have a look at Phuc Asia. And obviously it's a friendly community, and you are doing so much, from introducing people to technology to teaching people to code. It's a remarkable thing that you and your co-founders are doing. So all I can say is I really admire your work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time today.